Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the first 5 steps plus a little drive. Okay, it wasn't very exciting and it was in the wet. Did you see the wheel spin? If not, go back and watch the previous video. So for the next 5 steps then, I'm going to break them into shorter videos. Mainly because I want to get it out there as soon as possible and it's taking me way too long with a longer video. Another reason though is every time I do a video I learn something, and in the last video I definitely was cringing at some of the way that I was presenting it, so I'm going to change it up a bit, hopefully be a little bit more relaxed and not quite as it felt a little bit scripted last time. So in this video then we're going to talk about the cooling system. So hopefully we've already solved the engine cooling issues because of the oil. And here I actually decided to retain the OEM radiator. I actually upgraded it, so okay, it wasn't the dedicated OEM radiator from Mazda. This is actually a Koyorad aluminum radiator. But let's take a look at the installation in the car. So you can see the aluminium rad. It's actually a Koyorad. And then here is basically where the front of the engine bay was cut out. And then I've actually sealed it all. But that basically allows enough room for a small metal bracket to go there with a self-tapping screw, and that bolts the top of the radiator on. And then here you can see all that glorious clearance when it comes to the fans, the stock fans themselves between the accessory. So with the RX-8 there are a number of different ways you can mount the radiator when you do an LS swap. This is just one example. As you can see, this required trimming the front of the engine bay. You can go ahead and actually mount the under tray and work out how much room you have to work with. Now I was also running into issues with my accessories because with the AC compressor, the tensioner, that was actually getting in the way of the roll bar, the way the engine is sitting right now. In order to solve this and also support the bottom of the radiator, new brackets were made. So let's take a look at that in the car. These brackets allowed the roll bar to be lowered, as you can see there, but then also used to support the bottom end of the radiator, and you can basically see there's a little rubber bushing in there which is just some hose which basically supports the radiator, and you can see obviously the rubber there. So with the radiator mounted, it's now time to plumb it up. So this was a little bit tricky and I actually got some help from the Facebook group from George, so thanks again George. So there's 2 main hoses. One from the thermostat actually goes to the bottom of the radiator, but then the other one at the top of the radiator runs straight across into the top of the water pump. So this is now on the bottom of the radiator on the right hand side of the car, and you can basically see where the hose goes up to the output of the thermostat housing on the water pump. The other one goes straight from the water pump to the top of the radiator. From the water pump then there's 2 other outlets, or inlets I guess. They actually run through the pressurized tank into the heater matrix. That's basically where the radiator cap is, because on the radiator there is no cap. So let's take a look at that all in the car. Okay, so here's the water pump. So you can see the thermostat housing just there. That's the one that runs down to the bottom of the radiator. But then you've got these 2 outlets for the heater matrix. So at the moment I've got it set up that the front one comes up here, steps down to the original OEM size of hose, and then runs basically directly into the bottom of the overflow tank. You can see it just going into the bottom there. The other one then, the rear one, that one runs up here, steps down again, so you can see there's a little join where it steps down. And then from there it goes underneath the overflow tank, all the way back to the firewall. So you can see that hidden back there, hopefully. It's pretty tight with the amount of pipes in there, but yes, it's running back there. So then the other one from the firewall, which is this one here, runs up here, and then I've got it going into the top of the actual pressure tank itself. Now, because this is pressurized on an RX-8, so that's where the radiator cap is, that basically means it's almost self-bleeding. So every time it pumps through, it actually kind of helps with the bleeding. The other output then, because this pressure tank has another output, that's at the back, runs all the way down the side, underneath the wiring, all the way past the air filter, underneath here, underneath the cowl, and then basically up here, where there's a join, because I needed to get the right angle, and then I put a T in, and that's where it basically goes through to the steam pipes. And so you can see there that this is the other nipple on the radiator which you need to connect up. And so just trying to retain as much of the RX-8 as possible, that's the way it worked. And then in order to mount the pressure tank, I actually made these brackets up, which is just aluminium. And you can see basically it just bolts there and then bolts behind the washer bottle. And so far it's worked. Probably could do with being a little bit more stable, but haven't had any issues. So that hopefully takes care of the main cooling system for the RX-8 through the radiator and the coolant that circulates around the jackets. But now we have to worry about the oil. So yep, we've taken care of the oil pump, so hopefully we won't be superheating the oil anymore. But still, this is a very compact installation in a car like this. Now the RX-8 actually has 2 OEM oil coolers. I really wanted to reuse those because they seem to be fairly effective. So let's take a look at how they were plumbed in using the improved racing Takeoff plate that came from the Miata. So here's the improved racing oil cooler Takeoff plate. This is low profile, but in this build I don't think it actually needed to be. I think we had less room in the Miata. But basically there's a sensor there, so this one is pressure, and then the other sensor that I've plumbed in off the dash 10 lines is temperature. And so you can basically see the connections. And then these lines run down, gets a little bit busy, all the way to the front, and it splits off. One goes one way into one oil cooler, and I wish I had the plates off to show you. I might find another image or video, but basically there's an adapter there that goes directly into the oil cooler, and then the other line from the oil cooler runs across to the other side to plumb in the other one, and then there's a return line that goes all the way back into the engine. And so that's kind of how that's set up. So the OEM oil coolers actually have internal thermostats. I think they turn on around 210, somewhere like that. I actually decided to leave those in there, but you can actually remove them. There's a little channel in between the input and the output, and basically you have to plug that. There's some guides out there, I'll find the links and post them below. With all that taken care of, the last thing to do is the under tray. So it really is important to have an under tray on a car because it helps guide that air through the radiator, and in a build like this, that is really important. Now I know I've mentioned this in the past, but the LRB under tray allowed for a lot of flexibility. I had to get creative and actually modify it on the edges where it actually goes around the roll bar. But the nice thing about it is you can remove the center section without removing anything else. And also allowed a little bit of flexibility where it came to mounting. And you'll actually see at the back of the LRB under tray, I've actually secured it using zip ties to the subframe. So that actually works out pretty well. So there you go, the cooling system is complete. I really hope you've enjoyed this video and the shorter format. That's going to help me get them out there more frequently. Feel free to subscribe, like and share with your friends, but most importantly, have a great day.